Well, hello there. So glad you joined me once again. Well, it looks like Bilbo's about to be on his way, heading on from his adventure back towards his safe hobbit hole. He has said farewell to the dwarves and is off. So let's see how his travels go. The elf host was on the march, and if it was sadly lessened, yet many were glad, for now the northern world would be merrier for many a long day. The dragon was dead and the goblins overthrown, and their hearts looked forward after winter to a spring of joy. Gandalf and Bilbo rode behind the elven king, and beside them strode Bjorn, once again in a man's shape. And he laughed and sang in a loud voice upon the road. So they went on until they drew near the borders of Mirkwood, to the north of the place where the forest river ran out. Then they halted, for the wizard and Bilbo would not enter the wood, even though the king bade them to stay a while in his halls. They intended to go along the edge of the forest, round its northern end, in the waste that lay between it and the beginning of the Grey Mountains. It was a long and cheerless road, but now that the goblins were crushed, it seemed safer to them than the dreadful pathways under the trees. Moreover, Bjorn was going that way too. "Farewell, O elven king," said Gandalf. "Merry be the greenwood while the world is yet young, and merry be all your folk." "Farewell, O Gandalf," said the king. May you ever appear where you are most needed and least expected. The oftener you appear in my halls, the better I shall be pleased." "I beg of you," said Bilbo, stammering and standing on one foot, "to accept this gift." And he brought out a necklace of silver and pearls that Dane had given him in their parting. "In what way have I earned such a gift, O Hobbit?" said the king. "Well, I thought, don't you know," said Bilbo, rather confused, "that some little return should be made for your hospitality. I mean, even a burglar has his feelings. I have drunk much of your wine and eaten much of your bread." "I will take your gift, O Bilbo the Magnificent," said the king gravely, "and I name you elf friend and blessed. May your shadow never grow less, or stealing would be too easy. Farewell." Then the elves turned towards the forest, and Bilbo started on his long road home. He had many hardships and adventures before he got back. The wild was still the wild, and there were many other things in it in those days besides goblins. But he was well guided and well guarded. The wizard was with him, and Bjorn for much of the way, and he never was in much great danger again. Anyway, by midwinter, Gandalf and Bilbo had come all the way back along both edges of the forest to the doors of Bjorn's house, and there for a while they both stayed. Yuletide was warm and merry there, and men came from far and wide to feast at Bjorn's bidding. The goblins of the Misty Mountains were now few and terrified, and hidden in the deepest holes they could find. And the wargs had vanished from the woods, so that men went abroad without fear. Bjorn indeed became a great chief afterwards in those regions, and ruled the wide land between the mountains and the wood. And it is said that for many generations the men of his line had the power of taking bears' shapes. And some were grim men and bad, but most were in heart like Bjorn, if less in size and strength. In their day, the last goblins were hunted from the Misty Mountains, and a new peace came over the edge of the wild. It was spring, and a fair one with mild weathers and a bright sun, before Bilbo and Gandalf took their leave at last of Bjorn. And though he longed for home, Bilbo left with regret, for the flowers of the gardens of Bjorn were in springtime no less marvelous than in high summer. At last they came up a long road, and they reached the very pass where the goblins had captured them before. But they came to that high point at morning, and looking backward, they saw a white sun shining over the outstretched lands. There behind lay Mirkwood, blue in the distance and darkly green at the near edge, even in the spring. There far away was the lonely mountain on the edge of eyesight. On its highest peak, snow yet unmelted was gleaming and pale. So comes snow after fire, and even dragons have their ending, said Bilbo, and he turned his back on his adventure. The Tookish part was getting very tired, and the Bagginses was daily getting stronger. I wish now only to be in my own armchair, he said. And that brings us to the end of the return journey. We have, I believe, one last chapter to read, and it's not a very long one, titled The Last Stage. And we'll have to read that next time we get together. Until then, have a beautiful day.